did you move across to teaching? What was the passion from moving out of the agency world and getting into that teaching space?
I think it was a happy accident. I think what happened was I was happily running my agency. We were growing year on year, sustaining growth. And then about 18 years in, I thought I'd like to challenge myself. So I went back to Coventry University to do a master's degree, postgraduate master's degree. And I did that and I performed quite well. And throughout all of that process, they were very very complimentary of me. They would like me to get in. So I started my sort of teaching career as a guest lecturer, just talking about my business. And that sort of just developed and developed. So, and ironically now, I'm actually course director for the masters that I completed. So I've got sort of lots of perspectives. I've got perspectives of a student, I've got perspective of like management. So, and understand the creative and digital industries, inside out. So that's where I add value.
So I guess that really kicks off with the first question. There's a lot of talk around the next generation coming through, being different, having different values, different ideas. So you're working with these people day in, day out, Liam. What value do you believe? What values do you see the next generation have? And what do you think they'll actually bring to the creative industry as a whole?
Well, first of all, they're, sort of early adopters. So any new type of software, obviously we're talking around AI at the moment, but they're using that progressively in order to support themselves. So they're really early adopters. They're this, not the first generation, but I'd say they have massive emotional intelligence. So, they understand how to read a room and they understand, how to be apathetic. They're understanding all of these types of soft skills that, we as our age probably didn't have. They're also really lack confidence, which is, sort of counterproductive in terms of they're really good, very creative and free thinkers. But what they do is they lack sort of our confidence, if you like, in regards to how good they are. So they need reassurance. And, I think we've had this conversation before that I think that in the future, rather than, sort of project managers, you're going to have creative mentors, people that are almost life skills counselors that are, supporting this generation to get the best work out of them when they do suffer from that, sort of anxiety or, lack of confidence.
And that lack of confidence is quite an interesting observation, because you see the generation. I know my children are this next generation coming through. Nancy's just about to go to university, and they seem very aware of the world. They seem technology's actually brought that type of to the door quicker. I think they're much more aware of what's going on. And you touched there on the AI and the tech sort of exploding. What do you think the new roles that are going to be needed within agencies? They probably don't even exist today. I have this conversation with my kids, and I say the roles that you're going to do in your career probably don't exist today.
Yeah, I would agree.
And what are the type of things that you think agencies should be considering? What are the type of things that are coming through from that next gen that they're learning at uni? Where's this going?
Well, this is a white hot question, isn't it? We're also talking about, AI is going to decimate our industry. But I've seen a meme that's doing the rounds, and until a client can tell us effectively what they want, I think we'll all be safe, because, clients can't really sort of contribute or tell us what they want or always change their mind. And, and one of the things that I do talk about in most of my lectures is, it's that, who do you blame in a scenario where the AI's got it wrong? Who is to blame? I think what we're doing as a university, we're using AI ethically, and the students are using it ethically to support their work, but they're only using it when they are, when they're having creative blocking. where they can't get to that next level. So they're not using it to create coursework, because obviously they would be penalized for that. But when it comes to, if they've got, if they're struggling creatively, if they're, if we're running a module on digital marketing strategy, for argument's sake, and they're struggling with what their next steps are to, sort of make a very cohesive marketing strategy, the university have advocated them to use AI. So going back to your question, I think, AI is here. It's when it's dumb, and it doubles down when it's dumb. So all of those sources, and if you are using it, has to be checked. But I think and like you say, the sort of the technology is generated at such a fast speed at the moment. It's difficult to say what the job opportunities are going to be for our industry in the next 5 to 10 years. But wearing our very sensible cap, you've got to be using these systems in order to make yourself more employable post university journey.
And do you think that the speed of that development of tech and AI and other systems, does that add to that lack of confidence? Do they feel that they're at the forefront of understanding that, so that should buoy their confidence? How do you see that?
Well, I think remember, it's just a tool, isn't it, in your arsenal that you can use. I think where the lack of confidence comes is I don't know whether it's a social thing, or whether it's whether they just, case in point, I've got a group of 4 international students that are putting together very industry focused, specific, strategic work with real deep dive in terms of supportive data, but they still don't think it's good enough. And like I say to them, this is this is a postgraduate university course, so therefore it's master's level. You expect it to be industry level, but if I'm being honest, it's probably better than industry. And I'm part of a KTP as well, which is a knowledge transfer partnership for a company down in Bedford, and we're currently getting sort of strategic proposals for a digital marketing strategy. And what these students are doing are far superior in terms of their deep thinking and their creative process than anything that we're getting commercially. But I don't know how you can nurture a person to say, without just saying this is commercially based work, that if it was gone to a live client, you would probably win as a client.
Wow, that is interesting. So you've got 4 international students there creating amazing work that if they were actually put it as a pitch to a client, would, in your opinion, would probably win that work.
They would, yeah, without a shadow, they would get the work. And the irony of it is these particular students, they're always asking me to check the work, and it gets to the point where the work's so good that what do you do? What can you say other than you've got to be more confident? This is outstanding work. So, I suppose, and this goes back to what I said earlier in terms of, your project managers, your studio managers are going to have to be like life counselors as well. Right. Because with that lack of confidence comes anxiety, and already this term, I'm going into last semester dissertations. I've got about 20 students currently that are going through that process. And now 5 have already extended on the basis that they're suffering with their mental health due to the pressure of submitting the work.
Right. Okay. Well, that statement alone, there's a couple of things that come out of that. The first is that support and that mentoring in an age where agencies aren't all office based anymore. There's the hybrid working. There's people. I know agencies have employed people that have never actually been in their offices. They've actually never stepped foot in there. How do you see the next generation looking at that? Are they embracing the working from home, the hybrid? Are they wanting to be, like back in the good old bad old days in London agencies or Manchester agencies or big city agencies with the culture and the social aspect after work and the lunches? What's the feeling around that? What is the next generation looking for?
Well, they're looking for, I would say, a hybrid approach. They want that touch point where they can come in and they can talk to you face to face, but they are more than happy to, sort of discuss over Teams or Zoom. One thing that is interesting is they very rarely turn their camera on. So you have to insist that they turn the camera on when you have a one-to-one meeting like we're doing today. So, and there's always an excuse why they can't turn it on. And now I don't know whether that's, they've just rolled out of bed, or they're just, again, going back to that lack of self-confidence or self-worth. It's something that, I've only been teaching full time since January. So I've got 7 months, but sort of part time for 4 years. But this is throughout that time, this is a sort of reoccurring theme throughout all of the students that I've taught.
Wow. So they don't like putting the cameras on. They're just happy to chat away
Yeah,
with that.
yeah. But going back to what we were just saying earlier, I think that, in terms of becoming a life coach and a life counselor, as well as a creative force, I think that with the advent of AI, if that's doing a lot of the mundane routine things, I think that opens up that time frame to be more sort of use those soft skills and be more nurturing to your sort of your staff.
Okay. So looking at that, agencies have got to start doing even more than they're probably doing now. In the agency world, I think is always at the forefront of this, and that word is culture, of creating that culture in the business, in the agency. Is that something that is really key to that next generation coming through?
Well, definitely. I mean, if you look at their sort of what they want, they're more sophisticated than any generation before, and they're looking for employers that reflect their values of equality, inclusion. So agencies really need to embrace that in order to scoop up that talent.
Okay, and I know we had a conversation. I think it'd be really useful on this webinar. We had a conversation over a pint the other week, and you were saying that the sort of questioning that the next generation, the new students, would expect to be answered by future employees just blew me away. So I'd love you to share sort of that conversation we had over a pint. On what that next generation would be quite comfortable asking questions at an interview.
Yeah, so I mean, we spoke about this at great length. When we were entering into the marketplace, we were just happy to get that opportunity. When you had your employer or your potential employer ask if you had any questions, it would be, no, I'm just really happy to work here. Whereas this generation are using data sets, data aggregators. They're using sites like Endole and Companies House, and they're looking at balance sheets. They're looking at how much cash reserves companies have, and they're also asking questions of the employers. So, and questions like what's the long-term, sort of scalability of the business? Where do you see this business in 5 years? Sort of questions that you wouldn't normally expect a 22-year-old to ask, is embedded within them. They're interested to see what the long-term vision of the company is, which is really surprising when you put it into context. What me and you would have just been happy just to be considered and been happy to get a job.
Yeah, I think the questions that I would have asked would have been predetermined ones that you felt you had to It's only quite good, but I don't think at that age I would ever be asking questions around P&Ls and balance sheets and long term.
No. Well, firstly, we wouldn't have known what that was. But secondly, it's just that we don't have the information. We didn't have the information that they have now. So, and these data sheets that they're using, and using, they're using due diligence as well. So not only are they using data sets, in some instances, I've known some of the students reach out to ex-employees to talk about the culture. So, there's obviously a conversation there that you need to have when you are, as an agency owner, when your staff do lead, is there do you have to now sign some sort of non-disclosure document that, if anyone contacts you through social media, you're not allowed to present the company in a bad light. It's all these types of things. These types of systems are being used because they are early adopters of those systems.
And Liam, from your point of view, running your agency, someone out of university sits down looking for a first design job, and they start questioning you, the owner of the agency, on your balance sheet and your P&L and your long-term, your 3-year, your 5-year strategy. Honestly, how would How would that make you feel?
Well, it's well, yeah, I think you're just the way you would feel, Jay, you'd feel quite inclusive, I've been operating this business for 22 years, it's been successful, we've had a big team of creatives, we've won, huge contracts and awards. Why are you asking these questions? It's all there on the table. But I think that, this next generation that's coming through, I think you'd have to show some emotional intelligence and just answer those questions apathetically to ensure that you're getting that talent.
Yeah, and I think that word talent, we know the creative industry, the strength is talent. All agencies are the strength is the people within them, their creative ideas, their marketing strategy. So we understand this. And touching on something you sort of mentioned in passing when we were chatting, and you mentioned that your university, the international students, I think said the 4 international students working on this marketing strategy. And you mentioned in passing that very few of the international students actually end up staying in this country. Do you want to expand on that a bit? Liam?
Yeah, I think
That was really
yeah.
interesting
So
as well.
essentially, what you have is so in terms of one of the modules I'm doing at the moment, which is digital marketing strategy, there's 62 students, 60 are overseas. So
Right.
they come from, sort of India, Nigeria, China. So, a whole melting pot of different nationalities. But invariably, what they'll do is they'll come here for 1 year, they'll do their postgraduate degree, and then they won't be able to find work. So, I think that there's a real missed opportunity, certainly within the digital sector, because these talented people are then having to go back home because there's no opportunity here. Because I think that what agencies see, if we're entering into that visa program to extend someone's visa, then I think that there's a thought process that's quite hard, when the reality is it's quite easy. So, and I have it all the time. I have it from students that complain about, they're applying for lots of marketing jobs, but they're not even getting an interview because of their tier that they have to be in this country. So that's automatically a sort of blocker. And if you think about, the sort of diversity statements and the values that these students want post-university, we're not really fulfilling those as an industry. So, I just think there's a massive missed opportunity in terms of, there's really good people out there, that are really creative. They're creative forces. They're doing commercially ready work. But unfortunately, we're not scooping them up and giving them the opportunity to develop in this country, just because of, the visa opportunities and, miss opportunities, essentially.
Okay. That's. I mean, when you told me that, I thought it was really interesting because we do always have this shortage of talent. Most agency owners I speak to or I see on LinkedIn, there's always an advert for, experienced digital designers or marketing strategists. And it looks like there's this whole pot of talent that
Yes.
just goes untapped.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it requires effort to go through some processes in order to get them to stay.
Yes, yeah, it's exactly that. So, in terms of when they finish, I think they sort of have a 12-month to complete their postgraduate degree, then they have 3 months to try and find work. But invariably, a large proportion of that talent is going back home.
Okay.
So,
So
and there's a massive missed opportunity there, I feel, for our industry. Certainly because I'm working with them on a day-to-day basis, and I can see that the talent's there. And what I tend to do is I tend to reach out to my network, so my old companies that we've worked in the past, and just say, are you interested at the moment? And I'll get the students to send me their CV, I'll vet them, and then I'll bounce them on. And I think that there is that missed opportunity for certainly sort of local agencies.
Okay. So we're coming up, believe it or not, Liam, to five to 10.
Okay.
This has gone so quick. To just summarise from what you've been saying there, it feels like the next generation are very sophisticated animals. They use tech to their advantage. They would be quite confident around speaking what I'd call like the language of the boardroom. So
Yes. Yeah.
P&L, balance sheet, forecast, where's your business going? But on the other hand, are actually quite unconfident in what they're actually then going to be delivering in their career. And
Yeah.
because of that, there's going to be a requirement from agencies and businesses to really support and mentor those individuals through
Yes.
those
Yeah.
those early years of their career. And there's also a big pool of talent that is overseas that passes through the net because of the requirements around visas and things, and the effort that it would take agencies and businesses to actually enter that road to
Yeah.
bring them into the business.
Exactly.
Okay. So, last question. One bit of advice you could give the people on this webinar, or listening on a podcast, or watching on YouTube. They'll go away and say, actually, I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. That's what I should do. What would it be, Liam?
Wow, there's loads of advice, but the most important one, if you're out there looking for talent and that you were looking at this Gen Z pool, is just get your balance sheet in order. Make sure that there's cash reserves, make sure that, they've got a sales pipe, because they ask them awkward questions at that initial meeting. Then you need to know that, they've done the due diligence already. And just make sure that you've got the right culture, because they are naturalistically creative. But if they're not seeing diversity, and if they're not seeing, sort of professionalism, you're going to have high agency churn. They won't stay with you that long.